The ringtone hit me at 2:47 a.m., the kind of sound that cuts through sleep like a siren. I wasn't on base that night. I'd just wrapped a 12-hour shift at Fort Bragg and was half out of my boots when my phone lit up. Chloe, my sister. The last time she'd called that late, our mom had been in the hospital. So, yeah, my stomach dropped before I even picked up. Haley, her voice cracked. I'm at the police station. That woke me up faster than a grenade drill. What? Why? What happened? He hit me again, Ethan. But he's telling them I attacked him. They believe him, Haley. They think I'm crazy. Her breathing came in short, broken bursts. Stay where you are. Don't say a word to anyone till I get there. I'm scared, she whispered. They're looking at me like I'm the criminal. The line cut out. No goodbye, no click, just dead silence. I grabbed my jacket and keys and was out the door in under a minute. The roads were empty, the kind of empty that feels wrong, like even the streetlights don't want to see what's coming. The drive to Fairhaven took an hour and a half. I hit every red light like the universe was testing me. I couldn't stop thinking about Chloe. She was 27, smart, steady, worked part-time at the library, not the type to lose control. Her husband, Ethan Carver, was a different story. Smooth talker, owned a local construction business, the kind of guy who smiled for pictures but didn't mean it. I'd met plenty like him in the servicemen who knew how to hide the damage they caused. When I pulled into the station lot, the fluorescent lights made the pavement shine like glass. Inside, the air smelled like burnt coffee and floor polish. A young officer at the desk glanced up, clearly half asleep. His nameplate said, Keller. I'm here for Chloe Carver, I said. He hesitated. Family? Sister. I flipped open my military ID. Captain Haley Monroe, Military Police. Something changed in his face. His posture straightened. His hand twitched near his clipboard. Oh, right. She's, in holding. The other party's giving a statement. The other party. I repeated it slowly, letting it hang. You mean the man who hit her? He shifted on his feet. Ma'am, we're still collecting information. Then collect it faster. Han. He cleared his throat and led me down the hall. The place was half lit, humming with cheap fluorescent bulbs. Every few feet, I caught a reflection of myself in a window. Tired eyes, tight jaw, the look of someone trying very hard not to break something. We passed a holding room, and I stopped cold. Through the glass, Chloe sat on a metal bench, one wrist zip-tied to a rail. Her hoodie navy blue, the one she'd stolen from my closet last summer, was torn and stained dark around the collar. Her left cheek was swollen, purple and red, and she had dried blood above her eyebrow. Ethan stood on the other side of the room. Tailored coat, small cut on his lip, fake concern written all over his face. He was talking to another officer, gesturing with slow, deliberate movements, like he was rehearsing a story he'd practiced for years. Chloe looked up and saw me. Her eyes filled fast, and she tried to stand, but the zip tie jerked her back. What the hell is this? I snapped. Why is she restrained? Officer Keller froze. Protocol, ma'am. Domestic disturbances. She's the one who called for help. My voice bounced off the walls. You can take that thing off her right now. Keller hesitated. I need clearance from... A female officer down the hall stepped forward. I'll handle it. She pulled out a small blade and sliced the tie clean. Ramirez, she said quietly, offering a nod that almost felt like respect. Chloe rubbed her wrist, red marks circling the skin, then stood and walked straight into my arms. Her body shook like she'd been holding it together for too long. He said I attacked him, she whispered. He dragged me into the kitchen, and when I tried to leave, he slammed my head into the counter. I never touched a knife. Did anyone check her injuries? I asked. Keller looked cornered. She's being processed, ma'am. Medical's on the way. That. Processing victims now? That new policy? Ramirez glanced at me. I'll get a medic. I sat Chloe down and looked her over properly split lip, bruises on both arms, finger marks on her neck. She smelled faintly of copper and cheap disinfectant. My jaw clenched hard enough to ache. Across the room, Ethan leaned against the counter, watching us. When our eyes met, he smiled. Not big, just that smug little curve that said he thought he'd already won. Captain Monroe, he said smoothly, as if my rank was a joke. Your sister gets emotional sometimes. You know how she can be. Careful, I said. He kept talking, like he couldn't hear me. She came at me with a knife. I defended myself. Check my face, my arms, scratches everywhere. I didn't want to call the police, but she was hysterical. Hysterical, I repeated. That's convenient. Chloe's eyes filled again. He's lying. He grabbed me by the hair, Haley. I was just trying to get away. Keller looked between them, clearly out of his depth. His clipboard trembled in his hands. Mr. Carver, we'll need you to sit down, sir. Ethan chuckled. No need for that, officer. We're all calm here. That's when another voice broke in. Carter, a younger cop from the front desk. He was pale, holding a phone. Captain Monroe, he said quietly. Your sister's 911 call recorded everything. Audio only, but it doesn't match his story. Ethan's head turned fast. That could be edited. You can fake anything now. AI apps, right? Carter ignored him. The timestamp's clean. She called at 11:47 p.m. You can hear him yelling in the background. For the first time, Ethan didn't have an answer. His jaw tightened, his knuckles white. Ramirez looked at Keller. We should detain him. Keller hesitated again. He was young, maybe new, still clinging to whatever training manual said not to anger the well-dressed guy. I took one step closer to Ethan. You like control, don't you? You think money makes you untouchable. Here's the thing. You just laid hands on a soldier's family. Ramirez cuffed him before he could respond. The smirk dropped. Chloe reached for me. He's going to get out, isn't he? Not tonight, I said. And not if I have anything to do with it. While they led him down the hall, he glanced back once, eyes burning with something colder than hate. You think this changes anything? He muttered. I didn't answer. I just held my sister close, feeling her shake against me while the sound of metal doors echoed behind us. The medic finally arrived, muttering about delayed calls and missing paperwork. Ramirez shot Keller a look that could cut glass. You skipped protocol, rookie. He swallowed. Yes, ma'am. I stayed with Chloe through the exam, watching every move. She barely spoke, just stared at the floor. When they asked for next of kin, she looked up at me. Haley, she said softly. I thought if I stayed quiet, he'd stop. He never would've, I said. Men like that don't stop. They just get smarter. Outside, the parking lot was still empty, the kind of quiet that hums in your ears. I walked her to my truck, wrapped her in my jacket, and started the engine. The headlights caught the edge of the police building, stark and bright, like nothing had happened there at all. Chloe stared out the window, voice barely a whisper. They didn't believe me until you came. I didn't answer. There was too much to think about, too many faces in that station who'd looked right at her and saw a problem instead of a victim. As we pulled onto the main road, the radio crackled with static, then silence. Chloe closed her eyes, and for a few seconds, I let myself believe that getting her out of there was enough. But it wasn't. It was just the start. The hospital lights were too bright for 3 a.m. I stood in the hallway while Chloe sat on the edge of a gurney, a nurse taking pictures of her bruises. The nurse didn't ask questions. She didn't have to. The camera click said enough. When they finished, I signed the forms and followed the doctor to a corner. He held the report like it was something fragile. She's got old fractures, he said quietly. Wrist, ribs, maybe 6 months ago. This wasn't the first time. I nodded, jaw tight. Put everything in the file. Every mark, every bruise. An end of dame. He gave a small, understanding nod. Already done. When I came back, Chloe was holding her phone in her lap, staring at the lock screen like she was afraid to touch it. He texted me, she whispered. Said I ruined his life. That I'll regret this. I took the phone, snapped a photo of the message, and handed it to Officer Keller, who'd been hovering near the doorway, trying to look useful. That's intimidation, I said flatly. Add it to your report. Keller looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, the DA will decide what qualifies as intimidation. I just file it. You file it right, I said. We drove back to my house just before sunrise. Chloe sat silent the whole way, wrapped in a blanket the nurse had given her. Her reflection in the window was pale, almost ghostly. I wanted to say something comforting, but nothing I said would fix what had already been done. At home, I made coffee out of habit. She didn't drink it. I didn't either. The house smelled like caffeine and exhaustion. When my phone buzzed again, I expected it to be Keller or Ramirez with updates. It wasn't. It was a voicemail from a detective I didn't know. Captain Monroe, this is Detective Harlan from Fairhaven PD. The report from last night's incident is under review. Your sister's being listed as a primary aggressor, pending confirmation. The case might take a few days. I called him back before the message even finished. You're listing her as what? Primary aggressor, ma'am. There's a conflicting statement. We have to process it. She's got a broken rib and a concussion. I understand, but Mr. Carver claims self-defense. Says she attacked first with a knife. You believe that? Captain, please, it's standard procedure. Then your procedure is broken. He sighed like he'd heard it 100 times. I'm just doing my job. I hung up before I said something that would land me on an internal report. When I told Chloe, she went quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you worry she's about to disappear into herself. So he won, she said. No, I said. He's just playing the long game, and he's not the only one who knows how. I called Ramirez. She picked up on the second ring. He's pulling strings, I said. I know, she said. But listen, you need to be careful. The department's already nervous about your involvement. You're not technically part of this investigation. I'm family, I said. That's all the technicality I need. Haley, she warned. Don't let him drag you into something that'll cost your badge. I almost laughed. You think my badge matters more than my sister? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Later that morning, Keller dropped off a copy of the preliminary report. He looked embarrassed, handing it to me. They're moving fast, he said. I skimmed it, blood pressure climbing with every line. It read like a script from Ethan's mouth, phrases like erratic behavior and prior emotional instability. No mention of the hospital report. No mention of the 911 recording. Just his version, polished and safe. Who wrote this? I asked. Keller hesitated. Detective Harlan, ma'am. Then he's either blind or bot. He flinched. Look, I'm just a patrol officer. I can't. Then learn. I slammed the folder shut and took a slow breath. Yelling wouldn't fix this. Strategy would. I spent the rest of the morning calling anyone who owed me favors, old contacts from the service. A friend in legal, a retired cop who now ran security consulting. Everyone said the same thing. If the wrong person wanted a case buried, it would vanish fast. Especially in a small town where Ethan's company paid for the annual charity gala. At noon, Chloe's phone rang again. Unknown number. She stared at it, then handed it to me. I answered. Monroe. S. Silence for a second, then Ethan's voice, calm and smug. Captain Monroe, you're making a mistake getting involved. This is between me and my wife. She's not your wife anymore. He chuckled. That's not what the records say. And soon enough, everyone will see who she really is. You should tell her to stop playing the victim before things get worse. I hung up. I didn't trust myself to keep my tone professional. Chloe was shaking again. He won't stop, Haley. Yes, he will, I said. One way or another. I spent the next few hours documenting everything: screenshots, call logs, photos of her injuries. I uploaded copies to a cloud drive and sent them to my contact at the district attorney's office, Mariah Jacobs. She was sharp, tough, and allergic to bullshit. If anyone could cut through red tape, it was her. By late afternoon, she called back. I got the files, she said. And yeah, this report is garbage. I'll push for a formal review, but you should prepare for backlash. Carver's name carries weight around here. I don't care about his name. I know, but the people signing warrants do. That night, I drove Chloe to my friend's house on the outskirts of town. A safe place, no neighbors, security cameras on every corner. She didn't want to stay, but she didn't argue either. When I got back to my house, there was a car parked across the street. Windows tinted, engine idling. It didn't move when I pulled in, didn't move when I turned off my headlights. After 5 minutes, it finally rolled away. The next morning, Keller showed up again. He looked worse, dark circles, jittery. Captain, he said, something weird's going on. The audio file from the 911 call deleted from the system. Deleted? He nodded. I checked the log. It was marked as a duplicate and wiped. Who cleared it? He hesitated. Detective Harlan's account. Of course it was. I looked out the window. The street was quiet again. Too quiet. All right, I said finally. We do this the hard way. Keller frowned. What's that mean? It means we find the truth ourselves, and we make damn sure it sticks. He shifted, clearly torn between orders and conscience. You know I could get suspended for helping you. Yeah, I said. Welcome to the club. The plan was simple. Get copies of the security footage from the apartment building, the ring cams, anything that could prove Chloe wasn't the aggressor. Keller agreed to sneak me the case number and access code for the evidence database, just long enough to check timestamps. By noon, we had our first lead. The building's security system showed Ethan dragging Chloe by the arm at 11:42 p.m., 5 minutes before her 911 call. The lights went out at 11:43. Someone flipped the breaker. She ran out bleeding at 11:45. Keller stared at the screen. That's enough to reopen it, he said. Not yet, I told him. We need to make it airtight. He's rich, connected, and desperate. If we move too soon, he'll spin it again. He nodded slowly. So what now? Now, I said, grabbing my keys. We go get the rest. Chloe's voice echoed in my head as I walked out. They think I'm the criminal. That wasn't going to stand. Not while I was still breathing. The first thing I did was drive back to the apartment building. The place looked smaller in daylight. Ordinary even. The kind of beige complex that blended into every other street in Fairhaven. But when you've spent years investigating crime scenes, you stop seeing what's normal. You start seeing what doesn't fit. The super, a guy named Patel, opened the door before I even knocked. He looked nervous, like he already knew why I was there. Captain Monroe, right? The police were here last night. Yeah, I said. And they missed things. 9. He scratched his head. I cleaned the hall this morning, but I didn't touch apartment 3C. I figured it was still evidence. Good instinct. I just need to look around. You can stay if it makes you feel better. He followed me up the stairs, his shoes squeaking on the linoleum. The hallway smelled faintly of bleach. A cracked light flickered above the door. Patel unlocked it. The apartment was quiet, too clean. Someone had tried to scrub the kitchen counter, but they'd done a lazy job. Dried streaks of reddish-brown still clung to the grout. I crouched down and ran a gloved hand along the baseboard. Dust, crumbs, and a tiny sliver of plastic. I held it up. It was a piece of a phone case. Was this here before? I asked. Patel shook his head. No, ma'am. I mopped last night after the sirens left. Didn't see that then. I bagged it in a sandwich bag from my pocket. You got hallway cameras? He nodded. 2. One facing the stairs, one over the laundry room door, both backed up on a local drive in my office. We went downstairs. The office smelled like coffee and carpet cleaner. Patel sat at his desk, typing in a password, muttering, I knew that guy was trouble. Always acting like he owned the place. The footage loaded grainy but clear enough. Timestamp. 11:40, 2 p.m. Ethan's hand gripping Chloe's arm, pulling her toward the door. She tried to pull away. He yanked harder. A light overhead flickered. Then everything went black. Lights cut out, Patel murmured. Breakers in the basement. Who has access? Tenants don't. Only me. Then he planned it, I said. He knew where to hit. The footage jumped forward. At 11:45, the lights came back on. Chloe stumbled into the hallway, hoodie half off her shoulder. Blood visible even on the low-res camera. She ran down the stairs. 30 seconds later, Ethan walked out, calm, coat over his arm, checked the hallway camera, then went the opposite direction. That was enough to prove she wasn't lying. But I needed more than proof. I needed to crush every chance he had to twist the story. I asked Patel for a copy. He burned it to a flash drive, his hands trembling like he didn't want any part of what came next. If anyone asks, I said, you gave this to Detective Keller. He nodded too quickly. Understood. Back in my truck, I called Keller. I've got the footage. It's solid. He whistled. That's big, but if it didn't go through the official evidence chain, the DA might toss it. Then we make it official. You logged it this morning, remember? He hesitated, then sighed. Right. Logged this morning. Good. We were learning. I sent the file to Mariah Jacobs at the DA's office with a note. Matches 911 timestamp. Confirms timeline. 5 minutes later, she called. If this is legit, it flips everything. But I'll need to move quietly. The department's already defensive about the case. Defensive or corrupt? I asked. She paused. Let's just say they're careful about who they call a liar. While I was still on the phone, Chloe texted, "Mom called. She's coming back from Chicago. Says Ethan told her I'm unstable." Perfect. He was already rewriting history. When I got home, Chloe was pacing in the kitchen, eyes red but dry. "He's calling everyone. Mom, my boss, even the landlord." "He's scared," I said. "That's good. Fear makes people sloppy. He's going to ruin me." "One. Not if I get there first." She looked at me like she wanted to believe it but didn't know how. "Haley, do you think people ever really change?" "Some do," I said. "Most just get better at pretending." Before I could say more, someone knocked on the door. It was Ramirez, off duty but still carrying that don't mess with me energy. She stepped inside, handed me a brown envelope. "This never came from me," she said. "Internal memo. Harlan's trying to bury your sister's file. Claims the audio was inadmissible due to chain of custody issues." Convenient. He's also pushing a motion to seal the case until further review. You know what that means. They'll freeze it till she gives up. Exactly. I opened the envelope. Inside were printed emails between Harlan and someone with the initials EC, Ethan Carver. The subject line read, "Appreciate your discretion." I felt my pulse climb. He's bribing him. Or blackmailing. Either way, you didn't hear it from me. Ramirez turned to leave but stopped. "You're walking a fine line here, Haley. One wrong move and they'll call you the aggressor next." "Then I guess I'll make sure my moves count." After she left, I sat at the table staring at the envelope. Chloe was sitting across from me, hugging her knees. "What now?" she asked. "We build the case ourselves," I said. "Piece by piece. We don't give them a single gap to exploit." She hesitated. "You sound like you're back on duty." Maybe I am. That night, I barely slept. I spent hours listening to the 911 recording Keller had managed to pull from his backup drive. You could hear everything, the crash, the yelling, Chloe's voice saying, "He's hurting me," then a thud and silence. My sister's breathing turned into sobs. It was the kind of thing that stuck with you, like shrapnel in the brain. The next morning, I dropped Chloe off at therapy. She'd resisted the idea at first, but I didn't give her a choice. "You're not weak," I told her. "You're rebuilding." While she was inside, I stopped by the precinct again. Keller was at his desk, typing fast. When he saw me, he minimized his screen like a guilty kid. "What are you working on?" I asked. He sighed. "Cross, referencing Carver's business accounts. I found something weird." He pulled up the data. "Payments to a consulting firm, Lang & Associates. Recognize the name?" I froze. Lang. That name hadn't crossed my radar in 15 years. "Tommy Lang," I said. "I arrested his brother for armed robbery back in my detective days." "Same family," Keller said. "Ethan's company's been wiring them money for months." So, that was the connection. The past had crawled out of the grave to bite me again. Keller lowered his voice. "You think this is payback?" "I think it's something worse," I said. "I think it's strategy." Before he could reply, Harlan walked out of his office. He stopped when he saw me. "Captain Monroe," he said, fake smile already in place. "Still playing detective?" "Just visiting," I said. "Careful. People might think you're interfering with an investigation. Only if they forget who started it." He laughed under his breath. "Tell your sister to get a lawyer. She's going to need one." I watched him walk away, and for the first time, I knew exactly what kind of fight I was in. This wasn't about one man's temper. It was about a network, a system built to protect power and punish whoever dared to challenge it. And I wasn't about to let it win. I didn't drive straight home that night. My head was too full, my hands too tight on the wheel. Instead, I parked outside an old diner off Route 61, the kind of place that smelled like burnt coffee and cigarettes. No one admitted smoking inside. I ordered black coffee and sat in the back booth, laptop open, chasing the name Lang & Associates through every database I could access. 10 minutes in, I hit gold or rot, depending how you looked at it. Lang & Associates wasn't a consulting firm. It was a shell company, registered under a string of fake addresses in Ohio, Nevada, and Virginia. And one of its founding names, buried in the corporate paperwork, was Thomas Lang, also known as Tommy Trigger Lang, the same man I'd helped put away for armed robbery 15 years ago. The same man whose younger brother was now my sister's husband. I leaned back, staring at the screen. The air felt heavier, like gravity had doubled. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a long play. Revenge. I called Keller. He picked up on the second ring, voice groggy. Captain? You're sitting down? I am now. Lang and Associates is fake. It's Tommy Lang's operation. Ethan's been funneling money through it for years. He swore under his breath. Jesus. You think it's tied to you? I don't think, I know. What do we do? We don't do anything, I said. Not yet, we watch, we gather. Then we hit them where it hurts. After I hung up, I opened a new folder on my drive. Operation Lang. Old habits die hard. I cross-referenced public records, court logs, old arrest warrants. Tommy Lang had filed for parole twice, denied both times, but there was something: new letters sent from prison to a Fairhaven address. The recipient? Ethan Carver. The first dated back to 3 years ago. The year Ethan married my sister. That realization hit like a punch to the ribs. By the time I got home, the sun was clawing up over the trees. Chloe was in the kitchen, barefoot, hair tied up, holding a mug like it was keeping her grounded. You didn't sleep again, she said quietly. Neither did you. She tried to smile, failed. Mom called again. She's confused. Ethan told her, you're using me to get revenge on him, that I'm unstable. She asked if you've been taking your meds. I laughed, but it came out bitter. He's gaslighting both of you. Classic tactic. Undermine the witness, then rewrite the story. Chloe looked down. It's working. She doesn't believe me. Then we don't convince her, I said. We prove it. I opened my laptop and showed her the files. Ethan's been working with Tommy Lang. That's why he targeted you. She blinked. I don't understand. 15 years ago, I arrested Tommy for armed robbery. His brother sat in the courtroom and swore he'd get even. I thought he was just mouthing off. I was wrong. So, Ethan married me to get back at you? Partly. Maybe he saw a chance for money, control, both. But make no mistake, this was personal from day one. Chloe sat down hard. He ruined my life because of you? The words stung, but she caught herself immediately. No, I didn't mean it like that. How do you live with that kind of hate for 15 years? Some people build their lives around it. Before we could say anything else, there was a knock at the door. It was Ramirez again, this time wearing plain clothes and a face that said she hadn't slept either. You two might want to sit down, she said. Harlan's under internal review. Someone leaked his emails with Carver to IA. I raised an eyebrow. Someone? She smiled faintly. Anonymous tip. Don't ask questions. What happens now? I asked. Internal Affairs froze his access to the system. But they'll need more to bring him down. They're watching him, and they're watching you. So if you're planning to go cowboy on this, keep it clean. I nodded. I always do. Sure you do. Before she left, she handed me a small USB drive. Security footage from City Hall parking last week. Carver met with a guy driving a county-issue sedan. Thought you'd find that interesting. When she was gone, I plugged it into the laptop. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. Ethan shaking hands with someone tall, bald, wearing a suit. I zoomed in on the license plate. County government plate, registered to Marcus Reed, assistant to the district clerk. Why would a clerk meet with him? Chloe asked. To make files disappear, I said. I texted Keller. Pull everything on Marcus Reed. Financials, communications, side gigs. Within an hour, he replied. He's been approving fake invoices from Lang and Associates. Payments routed to Ethan's business accounts. So it wasn't just corruption, it was an entire chain. Money laundering, evidence tampering, maybe even obstruction. All of it built on the idea that no one would look close enough to care. By noon, I was back on base, sitting in a quiet corner of the MP office, pretending to work on reports. In reality, I was tracking Ethan's accounts. Years in the military taught me to notice patterns. Recurring transfers, fixed intervals, ghost vendors, and there it was, $7,500 every month, marked as consulting retainer. A small enough amount to avoid attention, steady enough to pay someone's silence. I jotted it down, heart steady. Facts. That's what wins wars. That afternoon, Chloe called. "You're not going to like this," she said. "Ethan's lawyer sent me a restraining order, claims I'm harassing him." Harassing him? You're hiding from him. Apparently showing up on the same sidewalk counts as intent to intimidate. I clenched my jaw. "Where did you get served?" "At the library. In front of everyone." Perfect. Public humiliation. Psychological warfare. 101. "Don't worry," I said. "We'll make that paper worthless." "Haley," she said softly, "you can't fix everything." I looked at the stack of files, the flash drive, the endless web of connections. Watch me. Later that night, Keller met me at a diner off the highway. He slid into the booth, looking like he hadn't eaten in a week. "I've got something else," he said. "Marcus Reed tried to withdraw 50 grand from a joint account yesterday. Guess who the co-signer is?" I already knew. "Ethan." "Exactly. And there's a third name. Harlan." That connected all three. The cop, the clerk, and the husband. The unholy trinity of small-town corruption. Keller leaned in. "You could take this to the feds." "Not yet," I said. "I don't trust anyone above local right now. We build our own chain of custody. We lock it down, airtight." He hesitated. "And then what?" "Then we let the truth do what it does best, burn." We sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the old neon sign buzzing overhead. Outside, a semi rolled by, headlights washing across the windows like a flash of daylight. Keller finally asked, "What happens if Carver figures out how close we are?" I looked out at the road. "Then we find out if he's smart enough to be scared." I'm out. When I got home, Chloe was asleep on the couch, the TV still on mute, a blanket tangled around her legs. I stood there for a long minute, watching her breathe, wondering how many more times she'd have to survive the same nightmare before it finally stopped. In the kitchen, my phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. No message, just a photo. It was me, leaving the diner, taken from across the street. The caption under it read, "You're next, Captain." I didn't tell Chloe about the photo. She'd had enough to carry. Instead, I forwarded it straight to Ramirez with one line, "Track the number. Don't ask how I got it." She called back 15 minutes later. "Burner phone," she said. "Cheap prepaid. Pinged a tower near downtown, then disappeared. Could be anyone." "Not anyone," I said. "Ethan. You can't prove that." "Not yet." I hung up and stared at the photo again. It wasn't just a threat, it was proof someone was watching, which meant we were getting close enough to scare them. I spent the morning tightening every digital lock I had, encrypted backups, external drives, hidden duplicates. Years in the army had taught me two things: the system breaks and people lie. The only thing that keeps you alive is preparation. When Chloe woke up, I had coffee waiting. She looked exhausted, the kind of tired that comes from emotional bruising, not sleep deprivation. "You're going back out again, aren't you?" she asked. "I've got to see a friend." "Which kind? The legal kind or the military kind?" "The kind who doesn't ask questions." She didn't argue. She just nodded like she'd accepted that her sister didn't know how to stand still. The friend was Sergeant Marcus Keller, not the young officer I meant, Mike Keller, retired Major Greg Keller. The man who trained me when I was a cadet. He ran a private security firm 2 counties over. If anyone knew how to dig up dirt quietly, it was him. He met me at his office, a converted hangar that smelled faintly of gun oil and paperwork. "You look like hell," he said. "Feels mutual." I told him everything: Ethan, the connection to Tommy Lang, the police cover-up, the DA's hesitation. He listened without interrupting, which was his version of sympathy. When I finished, he said, "You're poking at a hornet's nest full of lawyers and cops with dirty hands. You sure you want to play civilian vigilante?" "I'm not playing anything. My sister almost got killed because of me." He studied me for a moment. "You've got proof?" "Enough to make noise, not enough to make it stick." He opened a drawer and slid a small USB stick across the desk. "Encrypted database, background checks, contractor records, law enforcement rosters." "You didn't get it from me." I pocketed it. "I owe you one. You owe me a beer when this is over. Preferably one that doesn't come with a subpoena." End quote. Back in Fairhaven, the cracks were starting to show. Detective Harlan had been suspended pending investigation, but no charges filed. Marcus Reed had gone on medical leave. And Ethan? Out on bail, walking free, acting like nothing had happened. Chloe saw him first. She was coming out of the grocery store when he pulled up in his truck. She froze, groceries half in the cart, as he leaned out the window. "Still lying, sweetheart?" he said, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "You should really get help." She called me, voice trembling. By the time I got there, he was gone. But a small crowd was still gossiping in the parking lot. The kind of people who believe whoever talks first. I took Chloe's arm and guided her back to the car. "He's trying to provoke you," I said. "It's working," she muttered. "I want to hit him. That's what he wants. Don't give him a story." She was quiet on the drive home, then said softly, "You ever feel like the law protects everyone but the people who need it?" "All the time." That night, I sat in front of my computer scrolling through Keller's files. It was like opening a vault. Half the town's power structure was connected in some way. Contracts, donations, favors. Ethan's company had bid on half a dozen government projects, each approved by Reed's office. Money flowed one way, influence flowed back. And then I found something bigger. An email chain between Reed, a local judge, and an attorney from Lang & Associates. The subject line read, "Harlan account settlement." Attached was a single PDF, a copy of a sealed payment agreement. The amount, $250,000. Recipient, Detective John Harlan. Sender, E. Carver Construction. That was the smoking gun. Bribery, plain and simple. I printed it, 3 copies. One for me, one for Jacobs at the DA's office, and one for insurance locked in a metal box under my floorboard. When I met Jacobs the next morning, she looked worn but sharper than ever. "You understand what happens if we go public with this?" she said. "Every cop on the payroll will turn their backs. Carver will spin it as a vendetta. You'll look like the vengeful soldier sister with a grudge." "I can live with that," I said. "Can they live with perjury?" She sighed. "I'll file the motion, quietly. But once this leaks, it's out of my hands." "Then let it leak." Chloe was waiting at home, pacing the living room. "Mom's here," she said, voice tight. "She wants to talk to you." I groaned. Perfect timing. Lisa Monroe still looked like she stepped out of a corporate magazine. Hair perfect, clothes immaculate, emotion inconvenient. She stood by the doorway, arms crossed. "You've made quite the mess," she said. "Good to see you, too," I replied. She glared. "Ethan says you've been harassing him, that you're obsessed. He even showed me a picture of you breaking into his building. That's from the night I picked up evidence your golden boy destroyed." "Haley," she snapped, "you're making things worse." "No, Mom," Chloe cut in, voice cracking. "He did. He hit me. He could have killed me." Lisa's eyes flickered, just for a second. Then she looked away. "You've always been dramatic, Chloe." I met. Something inside me snapped. "You think bruises are drama? You think broken ribs are exaggeration?" Lisa stepped back, defensive. "I just don't want this to tear the family apart." I almost laughed. Newsflash, it's already torn. Chloe walked out of the room before the tears showed. Lisa followed, her heels clicking like gunshots. I stayed behind, hands gripping the counter until my knuckles turned white. That night, Ramirez called. "You'd better sit down," she said. "Word's spreading about your case. The chief wants to review your conduct. Someone's implying you stole police evidence." "Of course they are." She hesitated. "You've got enemies, Haley. Real ones. The kind that don't miss." I looked out the window. A black SUV sat idling at the end of my street, headlights off. "You think I'm scared? I think you should be careful." I hung up and went outside anyway. The SUV pulled away slowly, no license plate. My reflection flashed across its tinted window before it disappeared down the road. When I came back inside, Chloe was sitting at the table, scrolling through her phone. "He posted something," she said quietly. Ethan's social media feed showed a photo of him holding a press conference outside his construction site, talking about being a victim of false accusations. Hundreds of comments, half sympathetic, half cruel. Chloe's hand shook. "He's winning." "Not for long," I said. "He just painted a bigger target on himself." The next morning, I sent Jacobs everything. The bribe record, the burner threats, the financial links. I didn't care about chain of custody anymore. I cared about daylight. If the system wanted to stay broken, I'd break it open myself. By Monday morning, Fairhaven looked the same as it always did, quiet, suburban, pretending nothing ugly ever happened there. But the town's calm didn't fool me. Beneath it, people were choosing sides, whispering in diners, scrolling through Ethan's interviews online. His lawyer had gone full PR mode, painting him as the picture of self-control, a man victimized by his unstable wife and her military sister with anger issues. It would have been funny if it weren't working. The first blowback hit fast. My commanding officer at Fort Bragg called me in. "Captain Monroe," he said, "your name's all over the local news. The base doesn't like bad press." I'm in. "With respect, sir, my sister's the victim of a corrupt investigation." He sighed. "That may be true, but optics matter. Keep your distance until this is resolved." Meaning? Administrative leave. Effective immediately. So they benched me. Perfect. I drove back to Fairhaven in silence, the kind that hums in your ears. Losing the badge didn't bother me half as much as knowing that's exactly what Ethan wanted: take away my authority, my credibility, my access. Chloe was at the kitchen table when I walked in, laptop open, scrolling through news articles. "They're calling me unstable," she said, voice dull. One headline says, "Jealous wife attacks husband after domestic argument. He's playing victim." "Let him," I said, hanging up my jacket. "The louder he talks, the easier he'll trip." "Haley, people believe him. Then we make them stop." I pulled out a notepad and started mapping connections again: Harlan, Reed, Lang, Ethan. Money flowed down, damage flowed up. It was a closed loop, the kind of system that looked invincible until you found the weak link. That weak link turned out to be Marcus Reed's assistant, a guy named Trevor Holt. I'd found his name buried in an email thread Keller had forwarded. He was young, underpaid, and desperate to get out from under Reed's shadow. Desperate people talk. I called Keller. "Set up a meeting. Somewhere quiet." "Is this safe?" "It's Fairhaven. Nothing's safe." "How?" We met Trevor at a gas station diner off the highway. He looked like a kid caught stealing lunch money, sweaty, nervous, eyes darting everywhere. "I can't talk long," he said. "Reed's already paranoid." "You've got something we need," I said. He swallowed hard. "The payoff records." Reed kept paper copies. Said digital trails were too risky. They're in a storage locker downtown, under his wife's name. "You have a key?" He slid a small envelope across the table. "Not just that. There's a USB inside. Recordings of meetings between Reed and Carver. They thought I wasn't listening." I opened the envelope and checked. Sure enough, a small blue USB drive and a folded key tag with a locker number. Trevor lowered his voice. "Once this gets out, I'm gone. Witness protection, or I disappear myself." "You'll be safe," I said. "We'll make sure of it." He gave a bitter laugh. "Nobody's safe here." "Not really." After he left, Keller exhaled. "This kid just handed us dynamite." Then let's light it right." That night, I parked 2 blocks from the storage facility and went in on foot. The clerk barely looked up as I signed in using a fake name. Keller kept watch outside while I found the locker A17. It opened with one turn of the key. Inside, there were 3 cardboard boxes, a briefcase, and a folder marked contracts. I didn't need long to see what it was. Copies of bank transfers, notarized agreements, and voice memos. One file stood out, labeled Meeting 3 June. It was a recording. I played it right there through my headphones. Harlan's voice came first. "You promised I'd get half up front." Ethan replied, calm as ever. "You'll get it when the case disappears. No arrest, no leaks, you understand?" Reed cut in. "She's unstable, it's easy. We paint her as delusional. The DA will fold." Then a laugh, Ethan again. "And when her sister steps in, we call it retaliation. She's still wearing the badge. Nobody will touch her after that." The recording stopped. I stood there staring at the concrete wall, feeling my pulse in my fingertips. When I came back outside, Keller saw my face. That bad? Worse. They planned the whole thing. He shook his head. "If we drop that on the DA's desk, it's over." "No," I said. "If we drop it now, it disappears like everything else. We leak it, it becomes news. Then they can't bury it." Are you sure about that?" "I've never been surer." I spent the next day burning copies of the files, one for Ramirez, one for Jacobs, one uploaded to a secure cloud labeled under a fake charity. By evening, I called a journalist I trusted, someone from my old MP days who'd covered veteran affairs. "Haley?" she said. "Haven't heard your voice in years. What's this about?" "Truth," I said, "and I'm giving it to you first." She met me in the back of a coffee shop at dusk. I handed her a flash drive and a summary of everything. Names, dates, evidence. She read the first page and muttered, "Holy hell." "Verify it," I said. "Then publish. Every line. You realize this could ruin you." "Good. It's about time someone did." That night, Chloe sat next to me on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the streetlights flicker. "You look calm," she said. "I'm not. I'm just focused." "Focused on what?" "Finishing it." End of Clay's. The next morning, the article hit the internet. Inside Fairhaven's police scandal, bribes, false reports, and a domestic violence cover up. It had everything: recordings, transcripts, photos of the contracts. By noon, it had over 50,000 views. By evening, news vans were parked outside the police department. Harlan resigned before dinner. Reed was taken in for questioning. And Ethan? He went dark. No statements, no appearances, no smug interviews. For the first time, silence worked in my favor. At home, Chloe watched the news like she didn't dare believe it. They actually did something. "Not enough yet," I said. "But it's a start." "Haley, what if he comes after us now?" "He already did," I said. "This time we're ready." Later that night, I heard tires crunching on gravel outside. I looked through the blinds, nothing but an empty street. Still, I kept my sidearm close. Years in uniform had drilled the instinct too deep to ignore. By midnight, Ramirez called. "You did it," she said. "The whole city's talking. Internal Affairs is opening new cases. You're practically a folk hero." I laughed softly. "Let's not carve statues yet." She hesitated. "There's something else. Carver's lawyer just filed a counterclaim, defamation and interference. He's trying to paint the article as fabricated." "Let him. I've got his voice on tape." "Though, yeah, but he's not fighting this alone. Guess who his new attorney is?" "Who?" "Tommy Lang's parole lawyer." "Of course. The past never stays buried, it just hires representation." I closed the blinds, locked the door, and checked my gun again. The system was bleeding, but not dead yet. I'd started this to protect my sister, but now it was bigger. The rot wasn't just one man, it was the whole machine. And machines only stop when you break them. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cold air, the kind that never really warms up no matter how high the thermostat goes. Reporters swarmed the front steps like vultures, microphones thrust toward anyone in a suit. Chloe and I slipped in through a side entrance, escorted by Ramirez, who traded her usual smirk for the calm stare of someone ready to swing if she had to. Ethan was already there. Of course, he was charcoal suit, new haircut, his lawyer at his side. The same lawyer who once defended Tommy Lang during his last parole hearing. He looked polished, confident, maybe even smug, the kind of man who thought charm could rewrite truth. When he saw me, he smiled that same hollow grin. "Captain Monroe, or should I say former captain. Still a captain until they sign the papers," I said. "Don't get ahead of yourself." His lawyer leaned in. "We're confident today we'll clear everything up." "Yeah," I said. "So am I." Now, the courtroom was smaller than I expected. Low ceiling, fluorescent lighting, walls lined with wood that had seen better decades. The audience benches were packed, half local media, half townspeople, everyone pretending not to be entertained. Judge Whitaker presided, a man with a voice that could silence a stadium. "This hearing," he began, "is to determine probable cause for the charges of assault, bribery, and evidence tampering against Ethan Carver, Marcus Reed, and John Harlan. Defense. Prosecution, you'll keep it clean." I sat behind Jacobs, who looked more awake than anyone had a right to be at 9 a.m. She whispered without turning around, "If the recordings hold, we've got them. Just stay quiet and let the facts speak." Easier said than done. The prosecution started with Ramirez, who described the internal audit that revealed Harlan's deleted files and bank transfers. Then Keller took the stand, sweating through his shirt but steady enough. He walked the judge through the footage from the apartment building, Chloe's escape, the timestamps, the breaker switch, every detail lined up. Then Jacobs played the audio recording. Harlan's voice, clear as glass, You'll get it when the case disappears. The words echoed through the courtroom. The reporters in the back shifted, scribbling fast. Ethan didn't flinch. He just leaned back, whispering something to his lawyer. When it was the defense's turn, the lawyer stood, buttoned his jacket, and launched into performance mode. Your Honor, this is a vendetta. My client's wife and her sister have conspired to destroy his reputation. They falsified recordings, hacked private systems, and manipulated evidence. We have testimony sworn statements that paint a very different picture. He gestured toward Chloe. Mrs. Carver has a documented history of emotional instability, multiple outbursts. Objection, Jacobs snapped. Unsubstantiated character attack. Sustained, the judge said. Stick to the facts, counselor. The lawyer adjusted his tie. Then let's discuss facts. We have witnesses prepared to testify that Mrs. Carver was seen striking my client on multiple occasions. I clenched my jaw. It was a classic play, muddy the waters, confuse the crowd. Chloe looked down at her hands, fingers twisting together. I wanted to stand up, to shout, to remind everyone she was the victim here. But Jacobs had told me to trust the process, and for once, I tried. Then they called Ethan to the stand. He moved like he was walking onto a stage. I loved my wife, he said, voice soft, carefully rehearsed. But she's been struggling for a while. She'd get upset, paranoid, think I was following her. I tried to help. Oh. Jacobs leaned forward, chin in hand, like she was watching a cheap movie. Mr. Carver, are you denying that you made payments to Detective Harlan and Mr. Reed? I am, he said smoothly. Those payments were legitimate business expenses, consulting fees. Consulting on what? He hesitated. Permits. Safety inspections. Jacobs smiled without humor. Safety inspections. For a construction company that doesn't build in their jurisdiction. Ethan's lawyer jumped in. Objection, badgering the witness. Withdrawn? Jacobs said lightly, flipping to another page. Let's talk about this recording. That's your voice, isn't it? He paused, just long enough to sell the lie. No, it isn't. Sounds like someone spliced my voice into something else. You know how AI works these days. Jacobs hit play on another file, the one from Marcus Reed's office. This time, Ethan's voice overlapped with Reed's. Their conversation caught mid-sentence. You promised I'd get half up front. Ethan froze. For the first time, the mask cracked. Jacobs didn't let up. Funny how the fake AI version of your voice uses the exact phrasing you just denied. The courtroom murmured. The judge banged his gavel. Quiet. Ethan tried to recover. That could be anyone. It's not admissible. Jacobs tilted her head. Then maybe this will help. She pulled out a printed transcript of his text messages with Harlan messages Keller had recovered from the department server. The one that ended with, "You'll get the rest once the sister backs off." Ethan's face drained of color. Across the aisle, his lawyer scrambled. Your Honor, those messages were obtained illegally. Actually, Jacobs interrupted, they were obtained under subpoena last week. Check your email. You've been served. The judge glanced down at his notes. Objection overruled. I caught Ethan's eye then. He looked at me like he wanted to speak, but what came out wasn't anger, it was fear. The first crack in his armor. Jacobs finished her questioning and sat down. The defense called no more witnesses. There was nothing left to spin. When the hearing adjourned for a short recess, I stepped outside with Chloe. The courthouse steps were covered in reporters again, shouting questions, flashing cameras. She flinched, and I put a hand on her shoulder. You did good in there, I said. I didn't say anything. Exactly. You didn't have to. She gave a tired smile. Do you think he'll actually go to jail? He will, I said. One way or another. Inside, Jacobs walked past us, phone to her ear. Yes, get the federal guys ready, she was saying. Wire fraud, obstruction, witness intimidation, we're throwing the book at him. That was the first time in months I let myself breathe. Not relief, just oxygen. When court resumed, the judge spoke for nearly 10 minutes, summarizing evidence and testimonies. Finally, he said, this court finds sufficient probable cause for formal charges to proceed against Ethan Carver, Marcus Reed, and John Harlan. Bail is denied pending further investigation. Ethan's lawyer jumped to his feet. Your Honor, my client has no prior record. Sit down, counselor, the judge said sharply. Mr. Carver's influence ends here. The gavel hit once. Reporters erupted. Cameras flashed. Ramirez exhaled beside me. "Well," she said quietly, "I didn't think I'd live to see that." Chloe didn't say a word. She just stood there watching as the deputies cuffed Ethan, his smirk gone, replaced by something hollow. He looked back once, but I didn't look away. When we walked out of the courtroom, the air outside felt different. Not lighter, but clearer. Like the smoke had started to lift. People were still staring, whispering. But I didn't care. For the first time, truth wasn't just a theory on paper. It was walking out those doors with us. The next hearing was supposed to be routine, just another procedural day, more legal back and forth that no one but the lawyers cared about. But nothing about this case was routine anymore. The courthouse was packed again, the air thick with that mix of cheap perfume, coffee, and tension you could taste. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when Ethan realized his luck had finally run out. I arrived early with Chloe and Jacobs. Ramirez was already there, leaning against the back wall, arms crossed, eyes scanning for trouble. You could feel it in the room, something electric, ready to spark. The judge took the bench right at 9. "We're here to review motions from the defense," he said. "Let's keep this efficient." Ethan sat at the defendant's table, wrists free, posture perfect, every inch the model citizen pretending not to be cornered. His new lawyer, some high-priced shark from out of town, stood beside him. The man looked like he'd been flown in to fight a murder charge and had no idea he'd walked into a small-town disaster with cameras. Jacobs began by filing a request for federal jurisdiction. "Given the cross-state nature of the financial transfers and evidence tampering," she said, "we believe this case exceeds local authority." Ethan's lawyer objected immediately. "This is nothing more than a media stunt. My client has already been tried in the court of public opinion. He's a respected businessman, not some criminal mastermind." Jacobs smiled like a cat about to dismantle a mouse. Respected businessman who bribed a detective, intimidated witnesses, and deleted police evidence? You're right, sounds nothing like a criminal. The judge cleared his throat. "Miss Jacobs, stick to the facts." "Oh, I am," she said, turning to the big screen behind her. "Your Honor, permission to play Exhibit 24. Nye." The screen flickered to life. The video from the apartment building, the one showing Ethan dragging Chloe into the hallway. The lights cut out, then came back on, showing her running for the exit, blood on her shoulder. The room went still. Even the cameras from the press stopped clicking. Jacobs let it run, then paused it. "For months, Mr. Carver told this court my client attacked him. He said he acted in self-defense. But this footage, combined with the 911 call and the audio recovered from Detective Harlan's device, shows the opposite. Mr. Carver was the aggressor, the planner, and the liar." Ethan's lawyer stood. "This video has no verified chain of custody." "Actually," Jacobs interrupted, "it was recovered directly from the building's backup system by Sergeant Keller under court order, time-stamped and certified by the DA's office 2 days ago. You'd know that if you'd read your own discovery packet." "All Lou." A low murmur spread through the courtroom. The lawyer sat down, red-faced. Ethan's expression hardened. He stared straight ahead, jaw locked, eyes fixed somewhere just past the judge's bench. Jacobs clicked to the next slide, bank records, line after line of transactions. "And these," she said, "show payments from Carver Construction to Lang and Associates, an entity owned by Tommy Lang, brother to the defendant, payments totaling over $500,000 since 2018. Everyone marked as consulting. Everyone routed through a ghost account." The judge leaned forward. "Counselor, are you alleging the defendant conspired with his brother-in-law, currently serving time for felony armed robbery?" "Yes, Your Honor. The evidence suggests a coordinated effort to target my client's family for personal and financial revenge. A vendetta that began 15 years ago and nearly ended with my client's sister in a morgue." You could feel the shift in the room then. That silent, collective realization that the story everyone thought they knew wasn't the real one. Ethan's lawyer tried to recover. "These are coincidences, Your Honor. Business dealings, not conspiracies. The alleged victim's sister is a former military officer with a disciplinary record. This entire investigation has been compromised by her personal vendetta." That got my attention. I leaned toward Jacobs and muttered, "He's going for character assassination, classic, and a wenting." She didn't look away from the judge. "Then let's address that," she said aloud. "Captain Monroe, please take the stand." I hadn't planned to testify that day, but she didn't ask for volunteers. The bailiffs swore me in. Jacobs walked me through the basic service record: time at Fort Bragg, military commendations. Then she shifted gears. "Captain Monroe, what was your involvement in this case?" I responded to a call from my sister, Chloe Monroe, who reported being assaulted by her husband. When I arrived at the Fairhaven Police Department, she was detained, bruised, and treated as the aggressor. And what happened after that? I discovered that Detective Harlan had suppressed audio evidence, deleted her 911 call, and accepted money from the defendant to falsify reports. Ethan's lawyer shot up. Objection, speculation. Jacobs didn't miss a beat. Withdrawn. "Captain, what did you personally witness?" "I witnessed corruption," I said, plain and simple. The lawyer smirked. "Captain Monroe, isn't it true you were suspended from your position for misconduct related to this case?" "Administrative leave, not suspension. And I wasn't disciplined. I was told to lay low. There's a difference." He tried again. "And yet, here you are, leading a crusade. Maybe you're not here for justice. Maybe you're here for payback." I met his eyes. "If holding people accountable is payback, then yeah, I'm here for that." Action. A few people in the gallery clapped before the judge banged his gavel for silence. Jacobs nodded. No further questions. When I stepped down, Ethan's lawyer called his final witness a psychologist. She testified that Chloe exhibited patterns of emotional volatility consistent with trauma-induced memory distortion. It was the same tired tactic: blame the victim's brain. Jacobs destroyed her in 5 minutes flat. "Doctor, are you being paid by the defense?" "Yes." "And in Teddings, how much?" $200 an hour. "So, your diagnosis depends on who's signing the check." The courtroom laughed. The doctor shrank in her seat. By the time the closing arguments began, the air in the room felt combustible. Jacobs ended hers with a line that would stick with me forever. "Justice doesn't fail because of bad laws, it fails because of people who choose convenience over courage. Let today show that Fairhaven isn't that kind of place." 0. When the judge recessed for deliberation, everyone exhaled at once. The sound was like a wave breaking. Ethan stood, whispering something harsh to his lawyer. Then, out of nowhere, he slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "You think this is over? You think she wins?" 2 deputies moved fast, but he wasn't aiming for me or Chloe, he was aiming for Jacobs. She ducked just as he lunged, grabbing the table to steady herself. Ramirez was faster. She tackled him before he made it 2 steps, pinning him to the floor like she'd done it 1,000 times. The room erupted, people screaming, cameras flashing, deputies shouting. The judge pounded his gavel. "Order! Order!" Ramirez cuffed Ethan with a sharp click and hauled him upright. He glared at me, face twisted, eyes bloodshot. "You ruined my life," he spat. I looked at him evenly. "No, you did that yourself." "Vren." He tried to lunge again, but the deputies dragged him out through the side door. The crowd buzzed like a hive. Reporters were already rushing outside to call their editors. Jacobs straightened her jacket, unshaken. "Guess that answers any remaining questions about his temperament," she said dryly. The judge sighed. "Mr. Carver just made my decision very easy." He didn't need to say more. Everyone in that room knew what was coming next. I glanced at Chloe, who sat perfectly still, eyes glassy, hands clenched together. For the first time in months, I saw something in her face I hadn't seen before. Not fear. Relief. The verdict came faster than anyone expected. Maybe it was because the evidence was airtight, or maybe the judge had seen enough of Ethan's tantrums to make up his mind days ago. Either way, the courtroom filled up again like a theater on opening night. No one wanted to miss the final act. Ethan sat in the defendant's chair, wrists cuffed this time, a deputy stationed on either side. He looked smaller now, like someone had deflated the ego right out of him. Chloe sat beside me, her hands clasped tight in her lap. The bruise on her wrist had faded, but the scar underneath hadn't. Neither had the memory. Judge Whitaker adjusted his glasses and began reading the ruling in that steady, no-nonsense tone of his. After reviewing all presented evidence, witness statements, and the defendant's conduct in this courtroom, this court finds Ethan Carver guilty of aggravated assault, evidence tampering, bribery, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The judge continued without flinching. Given the severity of these offenses and the demonstrated pattern of manipulation and violence, this court sentences the defendant to 20 years in state prison without the possibility of parole for 12. Ethan's head snapped up. 20 years? His voice cracked. You can't. The judge's gavel came down hard. You've had your say, Mr. Carver. Now you'll have your silence. It was over. Just like that. Months of fear, tension, and lies cut down in a few sentences. But victory didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like oxygen after drowning. Reporters were shouting questions before we even stood up. Cameras flashed, microphones waved, and Chloe flinched with every pop. Ramirez blocked the aisle like a human shield, pushing through the chaos. Let them eat headlines, she muttered. You two walk tall. Outside, the air smelled like rain and asphalt. Clouds rolled low over the courthouse, dark and heavy, like even the sky needed a minute to process what had just happened. Chloe stopped on the steps, staring at the wet pavement. It's really done, isn't it? Yeah, I said quietly. It's done. She exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath since the night everything started. You think he'll appeal? Probably. Guys like him don't quit until there's nothing left to break. She nodded. Then we'll still be okay? I looked at her, really looked at her. The bruises, the fear, the quiet strength underneath it all. We already are. Inside, Jacobs was giving a press statement, the reporters circling like sharks with pens. This isn't just about one case, she was saying. It's about accountability, about making sure every officer, every official, every man who hides behind power understands that lies don't stay buried. Her words carried, and for once, I saw people listening. Later that afternoon, we went straight to the district attorney's office. The DA had called us in for something important, her voice unreadable on the phone. When we walked in, Jacobs and Ramirez were already waiting, along with a woman in a crisp navy suit. The woman stood, offering her hand. Captain Monroe, Mrs. Carver, I'm Deputy Director Helen Norris, representing the Department of Defense's Civil Affairs Division. We've been following your case closely. 1. That set off every red flag I had. Why would the DOD care about a small-town domestic violence case? Norris smiled faintly. Because it's not small anymore. Your exposure of the bribery network between law enforcement and corporate contractors has national implications. We're coordinating with federal investigators to expand the probe. And we'd like your help. He blinked. You're serious? Very. You're still officially on leave, not discharged. We'd like to reinstate you as liaison to our task force. Ramirez raised an eyebrow. Guess that's one way to apologize for benching you. Norris ignored her. You'd oversee veteran outreach and internal ethics audits. Your insight into both systems, military and civilian, makes you uniquely qualified. I didn't answer right away. Chloe looked at me, silent, waiting. For months, everything had been reaction survival. The idea of stepping back into uniform, but this time on my own terms, felt right. I'll do it, I said finally. But only if Fairhaven gets its own reform plan. Training, oversight, and a new review board for domestic violence cases. I want it written into the deal. Norris nodded once. Done. After she left, Ramirez leaned back in her chair. You really just negotiated with the Pentagon like it was a PTA meeting. Jacobs grinned. I was going to offer her coffee. Glad I didn't. Oh. Chloe smiled for the first time all day. You're really going back to work? Not the same kind of work, I said. This time, it's about fixing the system that failed us. That evening, the Fairhaven City Council held an emergency session live broadcast, standing room only. They voted unanimously to adopt what Jacobs called the Monroe Protocol, mandatory evidence retention, anonymous complaint options, and training reforms for all officers responding to domestic calls. When the mayor announced it, people actually clapped. Real applause, not polite. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. Back home, Chloe brewed tea while I stood by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. Feels weird, she said softly. Winning. Justice always feels weird, I said. It doesn't erase what happened. It just stops it from getting worse. She leaned on the counter. You think people will actually change? Some will. Some won't. But the rules just did, and that's a start. She nodded. I saw Ramirez on the news earlier. She said they're reopening all of Harlan's old cases. Good. Let him rot in paperwork purgatory for once. We both laughed, tired, but real. Then Chloe's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Hello? Her face went pale. She handed it to me. A voice came through the speaker, rough, familiar. Captain Monroe. This is Officer Carter from County Corrections. Thought you should know Carver's transfer convoy was attacked en route to state prison. 3 injured, 1 dead. He's missing. Chloe's mug slipped from her hands, shattering on the floor. I didn't move for a second. When? An hour ago. Highway 19, north of Ashfield. We're running a manhunt. You'll be briefed if we find anything. The line went dead. The house went silent except for the sound of rain against the roof. Chloe whispered. He's out there. I checked my sidearm, the motion automatic. He won't get far. Ramirez called within minutes. You heard? Yeah. I'm heading to the scene now. We'll keep you updated. Don't keep me out of this, I said. You're not on duty. I am now. I grabbed my jacket and keys. Chloe caught my arm. Haley, don't, please, let them handle it. I met her eyes. He's already tried once. I'm not giving him a second chance. She didn't argue again, just nodded, lips trembling. Be careful. How? The highway stretched dark and wet under the storm. Police lights flashed up ahead, red and blue cutting through the rain. I pulled up beside Ramirez's cruiser. She was standing by the wrecked transport van doors blown open, one tire shredded. What do we have? I asked. Ambush, she said. 2 shooters, 1 inside job. The guards say Carver had help maybe from someone higher up. We're checking traffic cams, but the storm's killing visibility. Had. I looked down at the mud beside the guardrail. Fresh footprints, heavy boots, heading toward the woods. Looks like he went on foot, I said. Ramirez followed my gaze. If he's stupid enough to come back here, we'll find him. He's not coming back for them, I said quietly. He's coming back for us. And one. The rain kept falling, hard and relentless, washing away everything except the one truth I'd learned too well. Justice might be written in the courtroom, but revenge always finishes its business in the dark. The rain had stopped by dawn, leaving the woods wrapped in fog thick enough to mute the sirens. Search teams combed the area for hours. Ramirez coordinated units over the radio while I followed the trail through the mud, every step bringing back training I hadn't used since deployment tracking, anticipating, thinking like the hunted. The prints cut through a shallow creek, then up a ridge behind an abandoned quarry. The air smelled of wet stone and diesel. When I crested the hill, I saw him, Ethan. He was sitting against a boulder, soaked, bruised, one hand clutching a pistol that had clearly seen better days. His cuffs were still hanging from one wrist. The chain snapped. For a second, we just stared at each other through the fog. You never should have come here, I said. He laughed weakly. Neither should you. You could have just left it alone, Haley. Moved on. But no, you had to be the hero. You call this heroism? You hurt people who trusted you. You destroyed your own life. He lifted the gun slightly. Funny coming from a soldier. You ruin lives for a living, don't you? The way he said it wasn't angry, it was hollow. The fight was gone, but the poison wasn't. I kept my voice even. Put it down. It's over. He looked out toward the highway, blinking against the gray light. Over for you, maybe. For me, it never was. You took everything from my family when you arrested Tommy. You think I forgot? I did my job. Tommy made his choices. So did you. He smirked faintly. And what now? You kill me here, say I went for the gun, tie it up with a bow? I shook my head. You're not worth the paperwork. For a moment, he seemed to believe me. Then his face twisted. You think you win because a judge said my name first? You don't win. You just live longer. He turned the gun not toward me, but toward himself. I lunged, grabbing his wrist just as the shot fired. The bullet tore through the dirt, grazing his shoulder. He screamed, struggling, but his strength was gone. I disarmed him, tossed the weapon aside, and held pressure on the wound while calling it in. By the time Ramirez and the medics arrived, he was fading fast. Pressure's good, I said. He'll live. Ramirez crouched beside me, glancing at the scene. You sure that's what you want? I looked at him, his face pale, lips blue from shock. Yeah, I said quietly. I want him to face what he did. Every day. Ethan was cuffed to the stretcher and loaded into the ambulance, sirens blaring as it disappeared down the road. I stood there for a long time, listening until the sound faded. Then, for the first time in years, I let the silence sit. Weeks passed. The official report read, escaped inmate recaptured after brief pursuit. Non-fatal injuries sustained during arrest. Clean, simple, safe. It didn't mention the look on his face when he realized his war was finally done. Chloe and I rebuilt what normal looked like slowly, unevenly. She started therapy twice a week, not because someone told her to, but because she wanted to understand herself again. Some mornings, she'd wake up shaking from nightmares. Other days, she'd hum while making coffee like she used to when we were kids. Healing never came in straight lines. It came in fragments that stitched themselves together when no one was looking. Lisa moved back to town with her son from her second marriage. The three of us had dinner once a week. Awkward at first, but familiar in that way families survive storms by pretending the roof never leaked as long as everyone stayed dry. Fairhaven changed too. The Monroe Protocol went national within months. Federal grants poured in for training programs and trauma response units. Ramirez led one of the pilot sessions, and Keller, of all people, became an instructor. Turns out I'm good at teaching rookies what not to do, he joked. As for me, I took the job Norris offered. Civil Affairs Division, Domestic Ethics Task Force. It wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. My office was small, my badge different, but for the first time, I didn't need a weapon to feel effective. One afternoon, a year to the day since the trial, Chloe and I drove to the courthouse steps. The city had just unveiled a plaque dedicated to victims of domestic violence who spoke up, survived, and changed policy. It wasn't fancy, just brushed steel with etched names, one of them hers. She stood there, fingers tracing her own name, her expression unreadable. Feels weird, she said. Yeah, I replied. Recognition always does. She smiled faintly. Do you think he knows? Maybe, but it doesn't matter. She nodded, then turned toward the street, where the city hummed on like nothing had ever happened. Later that summer, I got a letter. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Captain Monroe, you don't know me, but my sister does. She's one of the women who called your hotline. Said you picked up yourself. She's safe now, we both are. Whatever it is you're doing, keep doing it. A brother who finally understands what protection means. I folded it carefully and placed it in my desk drawer, next to a small keychain Chloe had given me on my birthday, engraved with 3 words. We don't break. That night, Ramirez came over with pizza and a bottle of wine. You hear? She said between bites. Carter's joining the state task force. Says you inspired him. Guess the kid finally found his backbone, I said. She grinned. And you? You ever gonna take a break? Maybe when the world stops needing one of us to fix it. End quote. She raised her glass. So, never. We laughed. It felt good to laugh without guilt attached. When she left, I stepped onto the porch. The sky was clear, the air crisp. Across the yard, the maple tree we planted after the trial had grown taller than the roofline. Its leaves fluttered in the evening breeze, and for a moment the world didn't feel so heavy. Chloe joined me outside, barefoot, mug of tea in hand. You know, she said, I thought about changing my last name again, but I think I'll keep it, make it mean something better. It already does, I said. She smiled. You really believe that? I nodded. I believe in what you survived, in what we built after. She leaned against the railing, looking out into the dark. You ever wonder what happens to people like him, after prison? Not anymore, I said. His name will fade, yours won't. The porch light flickered, catching the edge of the keychain in my pocket. It clinked softly against my belt. Steady, grounding, real. Across town, the courthouse clock struck 10. I could hear it faintly through the night air, each chime rolling across the rooftops like a reminder. Justice isn't loud. It's consistent. Chloe turned to me. Do you think we'll ever be completely okay? I looked at her, saw the calm in her face, the strength that had replaced the fear. We already are, I said. Inside, the radio hummed softly a local news story about new reforms spreading statewide. They called it the Monroe Standard now. I didn't correct them. It didn't belong to me anymore. It belonged to every voice that had been dismissed, every survivor who'd ever been told to calm down. I closed the door behind us, the warm light spilling across the floor. Outside, the wind carried the faint sound of distant traffic, a world moving on. And for once, that was enough.